Alright, let's be honest, trying to ignore Donald Trump is like trying to ignore a screaming peacock wearing a suit made of money. You can try, but it's going to be loud, obnoxious, and impossible to miss. Love him or hate him, there's no denying it. Donald Trump is one of the most polarizing figures of our time. And now, even though he's out of office, you might be surprised to learn that Trump's brand of, let's call it diplomacy, still has a fan club. Have you ever wondered which countries around the world still support Donald Trump even in 2024? Because, believe it or not, there are countries out there that still look back fondly on the days of covfefe and executive orders by tweet. From shared economic interests to hardline stances on global issues, these nations have found common ground with the former President of the United States. But hold on. Some of the names on this list might leave you in disbelief. So if you think you know who's on board with Trump's vision, you might be in for a surprise. First up, we head south to the land of carnival and questionable political decisions, Brazil. Now, Brazil, under the leadership of its own version of Trump, Jair Bolsonaro, has had a bit of a flirtation with Trumpism. Bolsonaro, often called the Trump of the tropics, admired Trump's stance on various issues. We're talking economic freedom, skepticism about climate change policies, the classics. And even though Bolsonaro is out of office, his followers and other conservative groups in Brazil continue to align themselves with Trump-like policies. They see eye to eye on things like cracking down on immigration, promoting traditional family structures, and putting their own national interests first, even if it means ruffling a few feathers on the international stage. Now, whether this love fest will last is anyone's guess. Next, we're jetting off to the Middle East, a region known for its sunshine, its falafel, and of course, its complex geopolitical landscape. And when it comes to Donald Trump, Israel's relationship is complicated, to say the least. On the one hand, Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital and move the U.S. embassy there was met with cheers from many Israelis. It was a move that solidified his image as a staunch ally, someone who understood and supported their claims. Many Israelis saw Trump as a breath of fresh air, a leader who wasn't afraid to shake things up and put their interests front and center. But on the other hand, his often unpredictable nature and his tendency to make unilateral decisions without consulting allies caused some anxiety. Fast forward to 2024, and Trump's image in Israel remains surprisingly resilient. His supporters, particularly those on the right wing of the political spectrum, still view him as a strong leader who wasn't afraid to stand up for Israel's interests, even if it meant ruffling a few feathers. Now let's hop over to Europe, shall we? Specifically to Poland, a country that's had a bit of a tumultuous history, to say the least. See, Poland, with its conservative government led by the ever-so-charming Jarosław Kaczynski, has had a soft spot for Trump. They see him as a kindred spirit, a fellow traveler on the road to making their countries great again. Trump's tough talk on Russia, his unwavering support for NATO, and his general disdain for all things liberal resonated deeply with the Polish government. And even though Trump's presidency is but a distant orange-tinged memory, his legacy lives on in Poland. The government still clings to his policies like a security blanket, praising his stance on immigration, his skepticism of climate change, and his general air of "we're right, everyone else is wrong." Now, whether this love affair with Trumpism will last is anyone's guess. Chapter 4. The Philippines. Strongmen sticking together. From the bustling streets of Manila to the pristine beaches of Boracay, the Philippines is a country of contrasts. During Trump's reign, the Philippines was led by Rodrigo Duterte, a man known for his, shall we say, unconventional approach to leadership. Think of him as the Filipino version of Trump, only with a much higher body count. These two strongmen, united by their love of authoritarianism and their disdain for human rights, struck up quite the bromance. Trump praised Duterte's war on drugs, which, let's be honest, was more of a war on the poor and anyone who dared to disagree with him. Many Filipinos still view Trump favorably, seeing him as a strong leader who wasn't afraid to stand up for their country's interests, even if it meant bending a few international laws. Chapter 5. Hungary, the Victor and Donald Show. Next up on our whirlwind tour of Trump-loving nations, we land in Hungary, a country known for its stunning architecture, its delicious goulash, and of course its increasingly authoritarian government. At the helm of this illiberal democracy is Viktor Orban, a man who makes Donald Trump look like a moderate. These two bonded over their shared love of strongman tactics, their disdain for immigrants, and their uncanny ability to appeal to the basest instincts of their supporters. And even though Trump is no longer in power, his legacy lives on in Hungary. Orban continues to rule with an iron fist, using Trump's playbook to consolidate his power and silence his critics. Chapter 6. India, a match made in, well, somewhere. From the bustling streets of Mumbai to the serene beaches of Goa, India is a land of incredible diversity and complexity. On the one hand, Trump's relationship with India was marked by a certain transactional pragmatism. He saw India as a key player in his efforts to counter China's growing influence, and he wasn't shy about using trade deals and military cooperation as leverage. But on the other hand, Trump's often erratic behavior, his protectionist trade policies, and his inflammatory rhetoric on immigration caused some friction in the relationship. So, where does that leave India in 2024? Well, it's a mixed bag. Next, we're off to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, a land of vast deserts, unimaginable oil wealth, and let's be honest, a somewhat questionable human rights record. Trump saw Saudi Arabia as a key ally in his efforts to counter Iran, and he wasn't shy about showering them with weapons deals and diplomatic cover. Remember that whole Jamal Khashoggi thing? Yeah, Trump wasn't too bothered by that. But here's the thing, even though Trump is gone, his legacy of cozying up to dictators and turning a blind eye to human rights abuses lives on. The Saudis still see the US as a key partner, but they're also hedging their bets, cultivating closer ties with China and Russia. Chapter 8. The UAE making deals, not headlines. From the towering skyscrapers of Dubai to the ancient deserts of Abu Dhabi, the United Arab Emirates is a land of contradictions. The UAE, under the leadership of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed, saw in Trump a kindred spirit, a fellow dealmaker who understood the art of the quid pro quo. They appreciated his business-like approach to foreign policy, his willingness to overlook human rights concerns, and his general disdain for multilateralism. And let's not forget the Abraham Accords, a series of normalization agreements between Israel and several Arab states, including the UAE. Now, while these accords were the culmination of years of behind-the-scenes diplomacy, there's no doubt that Trump's transactional approach played a role. Chapter 9. Japan, the art of the awkward hug. From the neon-lit streets of Tokyo to the ancient temples of Kyoto, Japan is a land of contrasts. On the one hand, Trump and former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe seemed to have a good rapport. They bonded over their shared love of golf, their disdain for China, and their general air of alpha male swagger. But beneath the surface, there were tensions. Trump's protectionist trade policies, his withdrawal from the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and his demands for Japan to pay more for U.S. military protection caused friction. So where does that leave Japan in 2024? Well, they're still trying to figure it out. Chapter 10. Russia, from collusion to confusion. And finally we arrive at our last stop on this whirlwind tour of Trump-loving nations, Russia. During Trump's presidency, Russia was the boogeyman, the shadowy force lurking in the background, accused of meddling in the election and pulling the strings of the Trump administration. And Trump, for his part, seemed oddly reluctant to criticize Vladimir Putin, often praising the Russian leader's strength and intelligence. But here's the thing, even though Trump is gone, the shadow of Russia still hangs over American politics. The allegations of collusion, the investigations, the constant drip of revelations, it's all left a stain on the US-Russia relationship that's going to be very difficult to remove. Outrode the Trump legacy, global chaos, or just chaos? And there you have it, folks. 10 countries that for one reason or another still find themselves drawn to the siren song of Trumpism. Whether it's a shared love of strongman tactics, a disdain for globalism, or simply a case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, these countries have found common ground with the former President of the United States. Now, whether this love affair with Trumpism will last is anyone's guess. But one thing's for sure, the world is a much more complicated and arguably more dangerous place thanks to Donald J. Trump. The enduring appeal of Trumpism, a global phenomenon that's as baffling as it is concerning. It's enough to make you want to crawl under a rock and wait for the whole thing to blow over. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and for the love of all that is holy, stay skeptical.